The holy sword that once shone brilliantly in the hands of the sword saint was now displayed in the slums for 20 years, with no one showing interest. Everyone believed it was just a broken sword, but the boy fell in love with it at first sight. He desperately wanted to buy it, yet even if he went without food or drink, 3,000 years of salary wouldn't be enough. Just then, the boy's childhood friend spoke up. "Idiot, if you like it, I'll buy it for you," the boy said. "But it's very expensive." The girl said, "It's just a broken sword. How expensive could it be?" The girl said with unusual determination, "Call me sister and I'll pay for it in full." The boy stared at the holy sword and said, 5 gold coins. The atmosphere immediately became awkward, as Mina hadn't expected a broken sword to be so expensive. She held her chin and observed carefully, saying, 5 gold coins? That's enough for me to spend for 200 years. Fred could only laugh awkwardly at this, but just then a rough and angry voice came from not far away. "What do you mean, broken sword? Get lost. This isn't a toy for you poor folks." As the words fell, a burly old man angrily rushed at the two of them. This person was the blacksmith shop owner, but Mina said calmly, "Old man, are you crazy? This is the slums. There are only poor people here." That seemed right. The old man was speechless. He could only angrily scold her for being rude. Mina wasn't about to back down either, cursing him back as an old geyser. Before they could come to blows, Fred quickly pulled Mina away. But the old man behind them was still indignant, because when the girl was nearly starving to death, he had given her food and saved her life. Why didn't she show him any gratitude? The old man walked angrily toward the blacksmith shop while thinking, but when he looked down, he actually saw the deep footprints in front of the holy sword. The old man sighed helplessly and said, "How long has he been standing here? But no matter how much you like it, I can't give you the sword. I know very well that people from the slums can never escape the slums, and my masterpiece is destined to shine before the whole world." It turned out the boy was just a candle-selling clerk at some hotel in the slums. His parents died early. He was taken in by the shop owner, Sanji, and treated like his own son. So to repay this kindness, Fred's salary was basically zero. But even so, he still worked wholeheartedly for this job. This day, hostile forces from the slums came looking for trouble. Fred looked up. The leader turned out to be one-armed Jack. He was one of the 5 major forces in the slums. The other 4 were Knight Sanji, Butcher Black Bear, Gambler Tease, Ware Fee. The most powerful was none other than Jack, who constantly thought about how to swallow the other 4 and monopolize the slums alone. So Jack came, today under the guise of negotiation to cause trouble. He said, "Hey kid, where's your boss?" After hearing this, Fred didn't answer, just stared at Jack with determined eyes. Jack himself had come. Should I fight or before Fred could think? Jack's subordinate Xiaojia couldn't hold back and said, "You brat, didn't you hear what our boss said?" Fred answered without any emotion, "I don't know. I'm just a candle seller." Seeing this, Xiao flew into a rage, cursing continuously, and slapped the box full of candles, knocking the candles all over the floor. Seeing this, everyone present held their breath. A big fight seemed unavoidable, but Fred not only didn't get angry, he even bent down and started picking up the candles. Xiao was stunned, then trembled with anger. He said, "You brat, don't you understand the situation?" But Fred remained unmoved, even asked him to move his foot. At this moment, Xiao could no longer hold back. He directly lifted his foot and kicked viciously toward Fred. Fred quickly moved the stick to his right hand, then swept forcefully at Xiao's supporting leg, lifting him into the air, then assumed a stance with full force, directly sent Xiaojia flying. This scene directly shocked everyone present, but Jack showed a meaningful smile, even stopped his angry subordinates. Jack said, "I like you very much, but I only have one hand, so I couldn't stop Xiaoxia. Please forgive me." But Fred said nonchalantly, I don't discriminate against disabled people." Jack laughed heartily after hearing this, but the next second, Jack's expression changed 380 degrees. His whole body erupted with terrifying pressure, saying, "How about we talk privately?" However, Fred wasn't crushed by his pressure. His eyes remained as determined as ever. The atmosphere was tense for a few seconds. Fortunately, Sanji's voice suddenly rang out. "So, it's Jack. Why didn't you tell me you were coming in advance? I could have prepared roast meat for you." Jack smiled after hearing this and said, "No need. We're not that close." Then Sanji stood in front of Jack, calmly, inviting him upstairs to catch up. But secretly the two had already engaged in a battle of auras. Although Sanji was at a disadvantage, he still refused to back down. So, in this situation, Jack had no choice but to agree to go up and chat. After they left, Fred's anxious heart finally calmed down. That was close. He almost died here. Although his life was saved, many candles were damaged. 2 hours later, Jack's group came down from the second floor. Jack said, "I'm good at reading people. Even your boss has the same opinion as me. If you're tired of the smell of candles, then come work for me." Hearing this, Fred helplessly touched his neck and said, "But they give me food, money, and even a place to sleep." Jack laughed and said, "We can give you these too." Then he flicked a gold coin to Fred, saying, "This is compensation for you." Fred received the gold coin in disbelief. This was the first time he'd seen a gold coin since birth. Jack said, "Come work for me. You can have as many gold coins as you want. When you've decided, come find me at the money house." Jack left the tavern after speaking. Fred behind him looked at the happy crowd and thought, this negotiation have gone smoothly. But unexpectedly, just a while later, he was called upstairs by Mina. In the room, everyone had gloomy faces, heads down and silent. Clearly, the situation wasn't optimistic. After asking Fred to sit down, Sanji handed him a short knife, originally meant as a birthday gift. But now, the situation was urgent. Previously, Jack's odds against Sanji were 50-50, although Jack had many subordinates. Sanji, as a retired knight, was also quite capable, so he could basically maintain the balance of power. But now Jack had actually found an active knight from outside the slums, breaking the balance. With no choice, Sanji had to stop Fred's candle job and gave him a mission that would determine the gang's life or death to be executed in one day. Taking advantage of the free time, Fred quickly seized the opportunity to practice swordsmanship. He was satisfied with his powerful slashing, but a hollow voice rang out beside him. "When you slash, you should reduce the angle of your elbow to increase power." Fred felt a bit helpless after hearing this. He didn't know where the voice came from, but it would only give pointers when he practiced sword. He only remembered that day when he was standing in front of the holy sword, admiring it. A black lightning suddenly struck down from the sky and hit him, but it caused no harm. Only since then, every time he practiced sword, a voice would ring out. This time, Fred couldn't hold back anymore, so he tried to do as the voice said. He closed his eyes tightly, concentrated all his strength in his hands, then raised the stick and struck down with full force. After completing the series of movements, Fred was shocked. What powerful force was this? This was a feeling he'd never had before. Who was this guy? Why was he so familiar with swordsmanship? Actually, even he didn't know who he was. He only vaguely remembered knowing a little swordsmanship. But with his love for swordsmanship, even after death, his soul didn't dissipate. Instead, it attached to the holy sword, becoming a sword soul. 3 days later, Fred came, outside the slums following the guidance. He was to bring back Sanji's old friend, Stanga, to help defend against Jack's group. Things went smoothly. Fred immediately found the legendary knight Stanga, then handed Sanji's letter to him. Stanga received the letter and began reading, learning of Sanji's urgent situation, but he smiled meaningfully. So, you're being attacked by mercenary knights. No wonder you need my help. The situation was urgent. Fred didn't want to delay further. After briefly brushing him off, Fred began leading him on the journey. But staying aside, "I'm not even sure if I should follow you, you fool," Fred said. "But at least I can show you the way you understand." Stang's face darkened after hearing this. "If you take one wrong step, I'll kill you." Seeing the other party trying to intimidate him, Fred ignored it, saying, "Let's go quickly. I don't want to mess up my first mission." Stanga was stunned, thinking, this guy's reaction is really strange. No wonder Sanji likes him. Stanga stared at Fred and followed him. When night came, the two found a cave to rest, but Fred kept staring at Stanga's face. Stanga said, "What? Never seen such a handsome knight." Fred said, "Right." Stanga said, "You really are a country bumpkin." Fred said, "Where are you from?" Stanga said, "Gia." Fred said, "Isn't that even more country bumpkin than a country bumpkin?" Stango was stunned, completely unable to find a reason to refute, so he threatened Fred again. "Better not get lost." Fred said, "Got it." Then he took out a row of fresh beef. Stanga said, "Is there a share for me?" Fred said, "No, didn't you bring food?" Then Stanga took out 2 pieces of jerky from his pocket and froze. Looking at the fragrant roast beef in front of him, his mouth watered uncontrollably. He said, "How about this? I'll answer one question for you. You give me 1 piece of beef." Fred was silent for a few seconds after hearing this, then said, "If you want to eat beef, just say so." Stanga said, "I have dignity. Knights don't take others' things for free. That's principle." Fred said, "You're already retired." Stanga was stunned again after hearing this. This kid really had a sharp tongue, but Fred wasn't that petty. Still casually asked 2 questions. "Name, age," Stanga said. Stanga, 42, cent. After a few seconds, Fred thought of another explosive question. "Do you know Aura?" After hearing this, Stanga's mouth curved up smugly. "Not every knight knows Aura." Fred said, "If you don't know, just say so." Stanga slowly stood up after hearing this and drew his sword. He held the sword in front of him and began meditating. After a moment, a blue beam of light enveloped Stanga. His eyes and his sword even showed deeper blue. When he opened his eyes, a powerful force emanated from him, almost knocking Fred over. So strong is this aura, just looking at it made one's heart race. Time quickly came to 3 days later. The two successfully returned to the slums. Stanga suddenly noticed something strange. He said, "It's so quiet here. So quiet it's disturbing me." Fred replied irritably, "Because it's night." Stanga said, "Really? Is this place usually like this?" He suddenly darkened his face. Before them were densely packed more than 30 corpses. Fred panicked. He hadn't expected Jack to launch an attack early. Then he quickly told Stanga the tavern's location and rushed back without looking back. The tavern was also in ruins. Fred felt something was wrong, but fortunately, Sanji was only slightly injured. Sanji said, "You brought him back, right?" Fred said, "Yes, he should be arriving soon." Sanji's veins bulged after hearing this. "Good. Tomorrow we'll settle accounts with Jack." Then Sanji changed the subject. "How's that guy been lately?" Fred said, "He's fine. He even demonstrated aura in front of me." Sanji was stunned after hearing this, showing an incredulous expression, and confirmed with Fred repeatedly, but still got the same result. Sanji thought to himself, "Not good. Everyone hide behind me. Stanga doesn't know aura at all." Fred was dumbfounded. If he's not Stanga, then who is he? After a moment, the white-haired man also arrived here. His eyes were full of killing intent. "So you hid here?" "Long time no see, Sanji." Sanji was shocked. quickly protected Fred behind him. Sanji said, "After all these years, why won't you let me go?" God poured a glass of Lafitte, said, "When you disobeyed the Count's orders and chose to be a deserter, your death was sealed." Even though the Count is dead now, Sanji flew into a rage after hearing this. "I'm human, not the Count's killing machine." After speaking, he raised his sword and charged. In his anger, he used all his strength and slashed down fiercely, but was dodged by God. Sanji said, "Such fast speed. Used to ask me for sword instruction. Have you grown to this level now?" But Sanji still refused to back down. One sword strike down was blocked by God's sword. Then the two exchanged several more rounds, almost destroying everything around them, but couldn't harm him at all. Seeing this, Fred quickly protected the proprie. After walking outside the hall, Fred said, "Everyone come up quickly." Sanji before Fred could finish speaking. Sanji was sent flying out, directly falling to the first floor. Following was God like the Grim Reaper. God said, "Sanji, won't you still go back?" Then, he slowly walked to the stairs, looking down at Sanji like an ant. Fred beside him saw him distracted, quickly pulled out a small knife and threw it, but was blocked by Godin. The ambush. Godin glanced at Fred sideways but rushed toward Sanji without looking back. Sanji barely dodged the attack by turning sideways. At this moment, God's patience was completely exhausted. Godin said, "Knights should obey orders unconditionally, Sanji." After speaking, he closed his eyes, then held his sword in front of him. A blue pillar of light wound around the sword blade. Fred felt something was wrong, quickly ran toward the first floor, trying to stop God, but it was too late. When he opened his eyes, with one swing of his sword, countless blades burst forth, destroying everything within a 2 radius. Only the late arriving Fred was spared, but the powerful shockwave still brought him to his knees. When the smoke cleared, Fred saw a scene he would never forget in his lifetime. Sanji was dead. That strongest man who always protected him was dead. Fred's world collapsed instantly. He casually grabbed a sword nearby and charged recklessly. He randomly swung a slash, but Godin dodged sideways. Godin was somewhat surprised. This poor kid actually knew swordsmanship. When he saw Fred raise his sword, he still mercilessly kicked toward Fred's vital point, directly kicking him away. But Fred didn't die. Just this powerful force almost made him unable to breathe. Godin thought, did his body instinctively twist to avoid the vital point? His talent might even be higher than mine. Killing him now would be too wasteful. Better to wait until later. Maybe he can be like me, even surpass the master. Who knows? God smiled, then said, "Knights only take what they deserve. I'm not Stanga, and I'm not 42 years old." After speaking, he returned the 2 pieces of jerky to Fred. Godin continued, "But I must take what's in my hands. This is my right as a victor." Fred barely heard any of God's words. He now had only one thought, that he must kill Godin. After the two looked at each other, God turned and left. Godin said, "Work hard to become stronger. 2 pieces of jerky aren't enough to buy my life." Fred gritted his teeth after hearing this, said, "Someday you'll die by my sword." After this, Fred kept squatting here, as if everything in the world had lost meaning. The proprietor, seeing this, directly slapped him, said, "Do you know the difference between people inside and outside the slums? People outside have countless chances to start over, but we only need to fail once and almost everyone dies." After speaking, she grabbed Fred, said, "You are our only hope. Live well." After a while, Fred escaped with Mina, but now he was seriously injured and could barely walk. While the slums were full of Jack's subordinates, Fred wiped away his sweat, swearing he absolutely couldn't die here. But just then, Jack's subordinates actually discovered them. Xiao Jia raged, "You two are dead." So the two, to avoid being hunted desperately, hid in a shop to avoid implicating Mina. The injured Fred suggested they split up and escape, but Mina started being stubborn after hearing this. She said, "I want to be with you." No matter how much Fred begged, Mina became more stubborn, even began crying softly at the end, but refused to separate. Fred had a headache. Mina was being disobedient at this time, and their commotion was quite loud, just waking up the shop owner. Turning around, the owner had already come over with a lamp. It was the old man from the blacksmith shop. "What are you doing here?" Mina was stunned, hurriedly picked up a knife from the table, said, "Don't make a sound, old man." The old man rolled his eyes. "Is this my house or yours? Why are you so righteous?" Mina said, "I said don't make a sound. Do I really have to stab you before you'll be quiet?" Seeing Mina's serious expression, the old man had to give up. The old man said, "I won't make a sound. Put the knife down." Mina gritted her teeth. Suddenly, remembering the holy sword, might as well go all in. She said, "Old man, hand over the sword you had hanging at the door." The old man was stunned after hearing this, refused her because that sword was more important than his life. He could never give it to mediocre people. Fred also tried to stop Mina, but now she couldn't listen to anyone. Her mind had only one thought, that if she could help Fred get the holy sword, he could definitely leave here alive. Seeing the old man's firm attitude, Mina gritted her teeth, gripped the knife tightly, making a do-or-die gesture. Fred said, "Mina, stop. Don't do anything foolish." The old man also closed his eyes, waiting for her to act. The next second, Mina swung the knife, but cut off her own red hair, said, "I'll give you all this. I'll repay the rest with my lifetime. Please give Fred the sword." The old man was silent for a few seconds after seeing this, then turned his gaze to Fred, asking, "Do you want to leave the slums?" After getting Fred's affirmative answer, the old man fell into thought, not to mention Fred's love for the sword, coming to admire the holy sword at his place every day. Besides, this kid really had some of that guy's style. Maybe he really could fulfill his wish. He was old. Let this kid fulfill that wish. After a moment,